of the families of those poor 20 children
Okay.
who were gunned to pieces by a lunatic with an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle. They were already grief-stricken beyond belief, and this guy poured petrol onto that grief quite deliberately to make a huge amount of money from his InfoWars fake news bullshit. And as a result, a lot of the families have now sued him, and they've won, and he's going to have to pay back tens, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars in damages to these families. And quite right, it won't do anything about the pain he caused them. Some of them actually had people turn up outside their houses with guns because Alex Jones had told them that these parents were making it all up. They were all staged actors. It was all run by the government. So I simply say to you, now I've told you that, what is your view of Alex Jones?
I don't see why any of that has to do with me. It's very interesting. I've done the guy's podcast. I know him well. He was professional and courteous to me. When I meet somebody and they show me respect, I show them back. Respect. That's what I do, as I did with you.
You respect him?
If somebody shows me respect, I show them respect back.
So if Adolf Hitler showed you respect, you'd respect him back?
That's a stupid question, Piers.
It's not. It's a logical extension of your argument.
No, if in 1931 I was walking through Germany and a man come up to me and said, sorry for bumping into you, I'd say, sorry, no problem, mate. I'd show respect back. I don't know, what are you trying to say? That I sanction the Holocaust?
You literally just said if somebody respects you, you respect them back
I say if somebody shows me respect, I show respect back. That's a good way to go through life.
Whoever it is.
If somebody shows me respect and is courteous to me, I'm courteous back. Yes.
How can you respect somebody who caused such misery and pain to Sandy?
I have no idea the specifics of the thing you're discussing. I don't understand any of it.
Well,
I don't know anything about it. You've told me your version of events.
When did you go on the podcast?
I was on the podcast about four times in the last 4 years. I did one relatively recently.
So four times you went on Alex Jones's podcast.
Correct.
Promoting him, helping him make money.
I don't think it was promoting and helping him because...
Well, it's his podcast.
Well, yeah, but I've been on the podcasts of people who absolutely hate me. I've been on liberal left-wing podcasts. I've been on feminist podcasts.
Fine.
And no, you just sat here saying I would like you to agree, perhaps we can agree on this point, that I'm not a feminist. I go on feminist podcasts. I do a podcast circuit.
You're not a feminist?
I don't know.
What do you think a feminist is?
Well, let's not change subject here, Piers. Stay on the subject.
You mentioned feminism.
Completely. But you're trying to get away from the point because what you did is you're trying to say because I did a podcast, I sanction all of this person's views. And I'm saying I do 5 podcasts a week. I do 5 podcasts a week and I don't sanction 100% the views of any other person on the planet because I'm an individual and he has an individual views, as do you. So I don't know why you're trying to come at me with one of his views and pretend that's something to do with me.
Because it's a pretty big view.
No, but it's a lame trick, Piers, and you're better than this. So let's move on.
Would you, if
Vladimir
Putin had a podcast, would you go on it?
Sure.
You would? Great. Okay, then we know what you're talking about.
If Vladimir Putin had a podcast, I'd go on it. If Joe Biden had a podcast, I'd go on it. If a feminist has a podcast, I'll go on it. If Piers Morgan has a podcast, I'll go on it. If Alex Jones, I don't see the point you're making. There's no point here. You're digging, but there's nothing to find.
Well, I'm not. I'm taking your position that if somebody shows you respect them.
I think that...
I'm saying there are lots of people in the world I do not respect. If Vladimir Putin showed me respect, I would not respect him.
That's your opinion. But
no, it's my view. What's your view?
Okay, that's your view. Well, your
view is you would.
You're sitting here, Piers, saying that I'm on Uncensored show, and in your intro you said that it's important that we don't have echo chambers and we have varying and that we have varying opinions.
Correct.
But then you're saying the people you don't like, you wouldn't go on their podcast.
No.
So you are a hypocrite.
No,
I will go on anybody's podcast and discuss any point.
I don't think you understand what censorship means, do you? Like a lot of words we've had problems with today.
You're just saying
what do you think censorship means?
No, but the point I'm trying to make here.
Hang on. What do you think censorship means?
Don't hide from the fact that you're saying you will only do podcasts with people you like.
Why do you think that's censorship?
No, that's your prerogative. My prerogative is
What does it do with censorship?
I'll discuss opinions with anybody, and I've done hard left wing. Why are you not asking me about the podcasts I've done for the people who are hard liberal left wing?
By the way, I don't care whether they're left or right. Okay. Extremists to me are all nuts, right?
Then we agree.
Yes.
So perfect.
Good.
Next subject.
All right. Here's my next subject. It was a very serious case here.
Jesus. And before we move on, sorry, Piers, but before you move on, I do find it kind of disingenuous, and I know we're on a show, and I don't have a personal problem with you, but it is kind of disingenuous to try and sit here and lump me in with some school shooting. That's nothing to do with me. That's nothing to do with me. On any level.
Let me respond.
On any level.
Let me explain. Like you've just said, you've been on this podcast 4 times.
In 4 years.
Since he said the whole thing was staged.
I don't know when he said
it. And I think the fact that a smart guy like you wants me to believe you had no idea that Alex Jones, who's been in the news now for the last 2 years for being sued by these families for the most heinous thing imaginable of pouring petrol onto their grief by claiming that shooting was staged. The fact that you're pretending you didn't know about any of that.
It's not about pretending.
And you've been on his podcast four times,
Piers.
supporting him and making him money. So damn right I'm going to call you out on it.
When I do a podcast, if you think I spend time analyzing the point of view of that person and everything they've ever said
you should.
For years beforehand.
It's not years, it was minutes in most cases.
Years and years.
When did you last go on his... When did you last go on his podcast?
You trying to lump me in and attack me for a person whose podcast I do having a view is absolutely childish. Because I've done a bunch of podcasts with people.
You would do a podcast.
I've done a bunch of podcasts with people who are advocating for things that I do not agree with on every single level. In fact, most of my podcasts are me disagreeing with people. So it's completely crazy that you're trying to lump me in with that. That's cheap. That's cheap.
You are completely misconstruing the point of what I'm saying. I think deliberately.
No, what you're trying is a cheap trick. And I'm just making it clear to the audience.
It's not a cheap trick. I'm just curious where your moral line is.
It's a cheap trick.
Where's your moral line?
I disagree with the points of view with the majority of the people I do podcasts with. So it's a very cheap trick you're trying here. So
when people invent vile things to make themselves rich off the back of families of little kids who've been blown to pieces with a machine gun or a semi-automatic version of a machine gun, I think that is actually a line I wouldn't cross. I wouldn't be happy to go on someone's podcast when they've been responsible for doing that. It's not about political views or differences of opinion over facts. It's about somebody deliberately inventing a pack of lies to compound the grief of families. And I'm curious, you don't think you have any need to go down any kind of moral quandary about people like that before you continue to allow them to use you for their own promotion.
He didn't use me. He didn't use me for
Why does he have you on the podcast?
Because we disagreed and discussed points like we're doing with you right now.
Did you call him out on that?
Are you using me? We didn't discuss that.
I'm not using you. I'm giving you a platform most people aren't giving you right now to show the world who you really are.
Fantastic. So neither of us are using each other. I'm here on your show. I'm providing you with content. You're giving me a platform. And nobody's using each other. It's mutual. We don't agree on a whole bunch of issues.
That's fine.
And here we are.
I think we've had a robust exchange.
Yeah, just like I've done on nearly every other podcast. And if someone were to come and say to me in the future, there's something, heaven forbid, there's a skeleton in your closet, and someone were to come to me and say, you were on Piers Morgan's show, did you know he's X or he's done X? I would say that's absolutely nothing to do with me.
Right. But I
make the same point protecting you. I don't know what you do. I don't know your personal life.
I can guarantee one thing. I will not be inventing stories about the families of kids.
I hope not. I hope you're a righteous person.
I don't know. I'm not claiming to be a righteous person.
I don't know.
I'm just saying that I just think it's interesting that you have no moral compulsion about going on people.
It's not about moral compulsions. It's about I don't know what you do, Piers. You could have a bunch of skeletons in your closet, my friend. I don't have a clue. I'm here on your TV show.
I'm sure we all have lots of skeletons. Let me ask you this. Interesting about the feminism thing.
Sure.
Do you identify as a feminist?
I think that women and men are fantastic. Both of us are fantastic. I think women reproduce. I think women need to be respected, protected, provided for. I think that modern feminism is kind of hard for me to even truly understand.
What do you think it means? What is feminism?
I think that the idea of feminism is that men and women are equal under the law.
And do you believe that?
Completely.
We should be treated completely equal.
Yeah, but we are equal under the law. Wouldn't you agree?
Not really. I think there are still some issues in the world where, certainly in workplace, the gender pay gap remains. They're not treated equally in most cases, women.
Well, that can be discussed, the gender pay gap. I think that's already been discussed at length. I think that there's actually...
You think women should go to work?
I think women should work completely.
You do?
Why wouldn't they?
Because in the parts of the country, of the world you were mentioning earlier, that have different views of women, they don't go to work.
In the parts of the world that person from the podcast was from, for the point I made, yeah, they didn't. But I don't live in those parts of the world. I think women should be free to work if they choose. I think it's very important that the family unit remains. I do believe that in my personal view, the most important and respectful thing a woman can do is become a mother. I think that having children is a beautiful thing. But obviously, if a woman wants to work and wants to have a career, especially now with paternity leave or maternity leave, and she can manage to do both, why wouldn't I want women to work? I don't know why anyone would ever assume I don't want women to work or think women can't work, because I said that I should keep them safe sometimes.
Good.
No, but it's interesting because you have to look at this, Piers. It's interesting how people extrapolate. Andrew said that he's responsible for a woman's safety, and he said that gives him authority to make decisions for her safety, and that's been misconstrued, and he's a bad person. He believes that women are property. So, but now we believe that Andrew doesn't believe in love. Andrew doesn't believe women should work. I don't know where all of that comes from.
Well, that's why I'm glad we've had a chance to discuss
completely. I believe women are sovereign individuals, and they can make any choice they so desire. I think that it's important that we remember that a man has a duty. I think I certainly in my relationship have a financial responsibility to provide for my woman. My woman would never have to work unless she wanted to, because I'm the kind of person who works hard enough that she wouldn't have to.
Should young men, though, all aspire to be like you?
Should young men aspire to work very hard, have no criminal record, become multimillionaires, protect and provide for the women close to them, be sovereign so they can stand up and have their own points of view in face of cancellation, be able to not be mentally intimidated when they go on national TV and there's traps set up for them? Yeah, I believe that confident, strong men who stand up and protect and provide for women are a good thing for the world and a good force for the world. And I don't think that I put a magic spell on anybody. I think there's a whole bunch of men in the world who understands my value. And if men grow up to be like me, you're gonna have a whole bunch of people with no criminal record, dedicated athletes, who protect and provide for the people close to them, are fantastic for the economy. And I'm certainly not the worst influence out here, Piers. You have Lil Nas twerking on the devil on music videos, which our children are digesting. You have drill artists singing about stabbing people to death in the middle of a knife crime epidemic. You have rabid psychopaths on whether the right or the left announcing violence on the other side. You have all these insanities in the world. And because I sit here and say, yeah, perhaps, now you've laid it out and it offended you, I understand.
I didn't say it offended me.
Okay, cool.
I just read you the things.
You read things that you said they could be offensive, and some people are offended.
Well, some people definitely were offended.
Absolutely. That's fine.
And honestly, I think some of the things you said were genuinely offensive and misogynist.
Okay, so they offended you. Like I said earlier. So they offended you, which is fine. I said they offended you, you interrupted me, and now you're saying they offended you, which is fine. But the point I'm trying to make is this. I'm not the devil. There are certainly worse people than me, and
I don't disagree
and they exist.
With
that. And I'm saying that my core tenets for the people who don't understand me are self-accountability, so I'm accountable for everything I've ever said. My core tenets are responsibility, so I'm responsible for everything I've said. My core tenets are traditional masculinity to a degree, which involves protecting and providing for women. And I'll make another point here that needs to be said. The number of women who have stood up and stuck up for me is ignored. Thousands of women are making videos saying, I've met Andrew Tate, he's such a nice guy. I wish I had a man like Andrew Tate who felt responsible to protect and provide for me. You know what? I do belong to my husband, that's why I married him and I love him. We ignore the thousands of women who stood up and stood by me and said everything I said is true. And we're taking a very vocal minority who have taken the things I've said and are pretending to be absolutely and utterly devastated by them for some reason.
All right, time out.
Sure.
You've had a good run there.
Sure.
An inquest this week found that a 14-year-old girl, Molly Russell, died from an act of self-harm while suffering from depression and the negative effects of online content. The coroner said she was exposed to material that may have influenced her in a negative way, and in addition, what started as depression had become a much more serious depressive illness, and she very sadly took her life.
That's absolutely disgusting.
Right. Her father.
It's terrible.
Her father's campaign for better protections against potentially dangerous social media algorithms, right? It says that the particularly graphic content she saw romanticized acts of self-harm, normalized her condition, and focused on a limited and irrational view without any counterbalance of normality. First of all, what is your response to that? Nothing to do with you.
That's the first thing. Yeah, it is nothing to do with me. The fact that a 14-year-old girl took her life is truly sad. The world we live in today is the fact that something like that happened is almost mind-blowing to me. That's truly sad. I actually feel sad inside to see something like that. This fact that they just said it's romanticizing the gory element. I don't know what she was watching, some kind of suicide videos thing. I don't know where these things are created.
Do you think the tech companies should be much tougher about stuff like this?
I don't know what kind of things she watched, obviously. I have to be a professional here. I think that the tech companies need to do their best to protect people, I guess, to a degree. But it's a slippery slope, isn't it? And then they use this slippery slope to silence some people and to
right. And I think it's a really fine line, and it's a complicated line.
It is very.
I was interested in when you did an interview with the Times. Hugo Rifkin, he's a very good journalist. You did a big interview with him, and it was interesting to me his conclusion, because he kind of concluded that although he found a lot of the things he said awful and offensive, and he didn't like them, and he didn't want to be that kind of person that would say those kind of things, nor could he actually work out exactly what you'd done, which deserved mass wipeout by all the tech firms. I thought it was an interesting conclusion. I don't know the answer to that, other than the reason I mentioned the Molly Russell case, not because that has anything to do with you at all, and I reiterate that.
Thank you.
So I simply ask you this. What has come clear to me in the interview is that a lot of things you say you wouldn't say now that you've said before.
I'd say them differently, perhaps.
Yeah, right. So to me, that's an acceptance, not just that you want to get back on platforms, because maybe that was one of the reasons you were no platform, but that you've recognized and understood the potential harm to the wrong kind of impressionable mind by some of the things you've said. Would that be fair?
I think that's 80% fair. I recognize and understand that with massive fame, you have to be more careful about being misconstrued. Like I said earlier, 1% of people misunderstanding you doesn't matter with a small audience. It matters with a very large audience. With power comes responsibility. I still believe the things I say. I do not want to be a negative force for the world. I also understand that I am a man who's lived a very difficult, nuanced life, and I am capable of making nuanced points that may be misunderstood by teenagers. However, that can be said about anybody and everything. Every opinion online can be misunderstood by children. Trying to protect children from the internet is a very interesting subject in and of itself, because I would argue that 80% of the content on the internet can be negative or detrimental to a young mind that doesn't understand the world. Yeah. I'd argue that all of it. We just talked about music videos and dancing on the devil and all this stuff. This stuff is dangerous.
By the way, I think you make a very good point on that. So, a lot of these rap stars, the lyrics, the videos, I think far exceed anything that you've been accused of doing.
Completely.
Because in a lot of cases, some of them promote non-consensual activity with people, right? And I just think that crosses a line you have, as far as I've seen, you haven't crossed that line.
No, I haven't. And this is the thing. And I've been vilified, not because of the things I say, because much more extremist content already exists on the internet. I think the reason I've been attacked and vilified is because of the popularity, because I became so massively famous, not because of what I was actually saying. So as a professional, I analyze that and I understand that, okay, I'm massively famous now and certain things have been taken out of context. However, I still do believe I'm a force for good in the world. And I'm not going to sit here
and say... Have you changed, though?
It's not about changing.
Well, it is. We're all involved in an evolution. How old are you now?
I'm 36.
36, right? I bet you're a different person to what you were when you were 26.
Oh, that's absolutely, that's right? Absolutely a fact.
So we all change. And Mike, you keep talking about being a good person.
Yeah.
I think if you're honest with yourself, that you can see why people found a lot of the stuff you've said problematic and misogynist. And I think you've recognized you wouldn't express yourself in that way again because you've understood that it's caused a lot of harm. And that's really what I wanted to get to today, was an acknowledgement by you that these things clearly were said in the wrong way, created the wrong impression if you didn't mean them the way you intended them, and can therefore have a malevolent influence when you have a huge following.
Yeah, when you have a huge following, you certainly have to be a lot more careful about how you get certain points across. That's absolutely a fact.
Andrew, I appreciate you coming all the way from Romania.
Thank you.
It's been an interesting conversation, and I thank you for having it.
Cheers, Frank.
Well, that's it from me. Whatever you're up to, keep it uncensored. Good night.